And there we go. All right. Yeah, I genuinely, like, number one tip before anything else, to Ryuji's point is just fuck around in the game. Play around in the game, open out as many menus as you can, and look to see what settings there are that you haven't considered before. That is a lot of what my learning has been, as well as a lot of very helpful, YouTube videos, YouTube tutorials, all of that along the way. But brief overview of everything I plan to go over in no particular order, and by no, I mean a very bad order, because this is a very disorganized presentation. Macros, sort of HUD layout tips, hotbars, including what I really like to do for a sort of cascading hotbar menu that I think is very fancy and very neat and like to show off. Just really quick overview of how to back up your settings to make sure that you have that. Targeting, in particular for M6S, there's a lot of M6S, if you haven't gotten there. We have a bunch of ads of smaller monsters that we have to hit in very particular, priorities. So knowing how to efficiently target, especially if you're a tank, efficiently target so you can provoke those is super useful. Party list, again, this one's especially for healers, being able to see who is on the party list and what's who is on the party list and what their HP is and what their debuffs are, and do you need to cleanse them. Battle effects, this one's another one that's a very simple macro that I have that people frequently request, is just turn battle effects on and off. And then the other thing, keybinds and movement. There are a lot of things in this game where movements, matters. And I am cursed. I only move using my mouse. I have WASD bound to other things. And just want to discuss, how do you make that happen? And why it might still work even though it sounds cursed. Chat filters, like I said, M5S is one of those fights that has boss cast bars memory mechanics. And there are some really nice filters that you can do to be able to spot the boss casts without, in my case, if you miss what the actual cast bar says. Couple of small notes for accessibility. Unfortunately, there just really isn't much in the game, and then semi-related, illegal. But gonna start off with macros. Generally speaking, all it is text commands. So popping over to the actual game, let me ignore my free company chat. You don't need to know what they're up to. So popping over to the game, I have my macros here on a little button, but they are just under system. They are under user macros. You have individual and shared. If you have not taken a look at the text command window, you gotta. There's just so much shit in here. Most of it is emotes, but there are so many useful things that you can do to make some really powerful macros that will just help you. Or just make things look nice. For example, I have all of my job changes set to have the jobstone icon because I like my hotbar to look more colorful and less gray. I think when it looks gray, it looks sad. And very basics of macros, anything that is this text command, you can make into a macro, and anything that you can also just have a macro that types something. A lot of very common macros for raiding, and something that I'd recommend you get used to just sort of having a couple macros around, are things for stacks or spreads, or roll stacks, light parties. Again, what we have in M5S. I have this one because I got the 70 Alliance raid of Weeping Mahaki in so many times while leveling Red Mage, and everyone died to the Necro Purge, so I made a macro that just says, in Alliance chat, stand in exactly one puddle of the green Necro Purge goo to live through Megadeth. All a macro is just typing something in your chat box. And there's just so many that are useful, and I can't imagine not using them, including I have a macro here for instant ground targeting for my Astro, because I'm bad at ground targeting. That's gonna aggro someone, isn't it? So, anyways, that's what I was basically saying there. Okay. Now that I'm away from the enemy and they're not gonna aggro on me. Again, just sort of going over really quickly how you find them. You can tell what is a macro on your hotbar, even if you set it with a ability. Again, popping back over to Astro. My Earthly Star, the ability, I have right here as just a normal icon, and I can distinguish it from my macro because it has that little gear icon. If you're going to start using a lot of macros, I really recommend just playing around with the M icon command. All that does is it decides what the icon is. You can set it to any item or skill, including blue mage skills, or minion or mount, but it has to be in your inventory. If you don't want to mess around, there are some default icons here, but again, I think that these look ugly and I don't like my hotbar looking gray. All right. And then a couple of sort of macros that I like to use. This one is an example, /E. This is echo chat. This is something that you might need to filter in your chat log. Make sure you have it in the right thing. I have my echo set to be just obnoxiously pink. And we can actually see that I have a bunch of sound effects from a macro I was spamming before starting here. And I have that just in echo chat so that I hear these sounds, but no one else is. So if you have like little reminders for yourself, like cooldown is up for this ability, you can set that so that it makes a sound. Yeah, and no one else in the party is going to get annoyed. Otherwise, like I said, having stuff to go in party chat is really valuable as well. Let's see if I have... Popping back over here. The one thing that you don't want to do for macros is skills. In particular, anything that's a GCD skill, GCD meaning global cooldown, anything that if I press benefit, multiple skills you see all have that little cooldown, that is a GCD. You never want to macro those. Very, very tiny asterisk. I'll get to res macros. I don't like them. I don't think you should use them. But many people do find them useful, and some of this is just me being petty. If you are going to... But yeah, because of the way that macros queue, you are never going to... Or rather, don't queue. Notice I'm able to press my benefic before it's done, and yeah, I'm sort of click spamming, and guarantee that it's immediately going into the next benefic. Macros can't do that. So things like macros can't do that. So anytime that you would be spamming GCDs, such as spamming Broil to attack the boss, if you try to macro that, it will be delayed, you will lose DPS, you will be pointed at and laughed at. What you do want to macro are things like Shirk or off global cooldowns. This star target that I have, this is an off global cooldown. So if I am sort of in that slide cast window after benefic, then I can do various OGCDs, and these can all be macroed somewhat safely. They still can't be queued, which means that you can drop the macro. That's why you'll see many skill macros will have this format, where you have M error off, and then you have the action name just repeated a ton. The reasoning for this is if I were to try to use my macro and hit it with the timing that I might be used to hitting a GCD skill or OGCD skill to weave in, then the macro will try to use itself immediately, might not go off, So if you're ever using it to macro skills in combat, it's suggested that you spam the macro and have macro arrow off, and you only ever do this with one ability at a time. Other things, I have a special Shukuchi, so this one is using the ninja ability teleport, making it so that it teleports to your target, which is the little angle T. Vase icons. Vase macros. I have a little bit of a grudge against Vase macros, and it's not just because this one person drove me insane in a roulette when I was a sprout, so much so that I learned how to make screenshots. It's also just because they are going to be delayed, and if you're a healer in Savage content, even that split-second delay can be so vital in terms of someone getting up or not getting up in time for the next mechanic. That said, what's also really tough and can lose you it can cause a wipe or lose you precious seconds in a raid is if both healers go to raise the same person and there's not any communication. To that end, there is some benefit to raise macros. I would say best practice is to instead have a raise priority system. Talk to your co-healer and casters who can raise. Say, okay, I will take the first raise. If multiple people are dead, I will start from the top of the party list. You will start from the bottom of the party list. And you can change your party list to make sure that that works. I'll go over that in a sec. If you don't want to do that, you can also do something like this. So this one is, I have them all set to echo. This White Mage Raise button does not actually have, these all have the action. What is it? There you go. This is one that I made that I don't use much because I'm just not used to it using raise macros. But this is an alternative. It does require pressing another button, but the way that this works, and I'll set it to echo so that it shows up in my chat, is I swift cast. I go to raise and then I press my raise call, and that only sends the message in chat. So I target myself and I do raising further ado. So you can still get the cringe chat macros without the GCD delay if that is genuinely something that is very helpful for you or your party as far as healer communication. And also, if you're doing raise macros in casual content, that's fine. This causes me pain, but this doesn't cause a wipe. The sort of every GCD matters is something that is important in, high-end content, but not so much in general stuff. So yeah, I'll have more macros that sort of get mentioned as we go on. Jumping into system config and character config, these are the meat of the menus. So generally, we're using system to look at our general UI size, looking at the system volume, and if you're on console or have a controller, it's, for some reason, instead of being under keybinds, your controller settings and button assignments are under system settings because this game is poorly designed. System doesn't have a lot that you're going to use. It's going to be under system config. But I would suggest, especially if you are playing on a TV screen, a console that's further away from you, or vice versa if you're playing on a screen that's really up close to you, mess around with the UI scaling. I have my UI set a little bit larger just so that I can read text more naturally. This is a pain every time you change the UI scale and set the apply all. It's going to change every single thing, and your HUD's going to get really messy. So I'd suggest finding what UI scaling size works for you before you mess with all of this stuff. You can also right-click any window and change the scale individually. I will do that all the time when I go, I can't see my character, I need them to be big, and then I open the same menu in Fight, and I'm like, oh god, why is that so big? I need it to be small. Let's see. But yeah, system config is pretty self-explanatory. I do want to point out on sound settings, there are a lot of sounds that are genuinely useful tools in the game. This is something where, for example, in P8S, if you heard the bird screech coming from behind you or further away from you, or if you heard a bird screech as opposed to a dragon roar, you would know what attack was coming up, even if you didn't have that particular animation in your field of view. To that end, I would suggest considering playing with the listening position, so to making sure that you are wherever. It doesn't need to be at your character. I prefer it at my character because that's how I think. But you can have it at your character to hear stuff that's right next to them. So I might hear, again, that bird behind me. Or you can have it further away at the camera. And this can be helpful to not hear other PCs shouting next to you. And this is all pretty subtle stuff, but I would suggest having some sort of, even if you hate the background music, having some sort of sound effects on, super useful. Graphics settings, it's graphics. Having less on might be faster for you, who knows. Mouse settings, the cursor is something, software cursor has a very slight amount of lag, but has tracking. If you are someone who loses their cursor a lot, you might want to consider trying out the software cursor and this little tracking feature to make sure that you don't lose it. You can also use your hardware cursor instead of the custom cursor, and if your hardware has tracking, I'm pretty sure that carries over. Gamepad, button calibration. This is your keybinds. I've got a screenshot from Kat later on just to sort of show a couple of very small console tips. I don't use controller, but I can try my best to pass on the tips that I asked for. Trying to think that was, oh yeah, and then accessibility, very, very minimal options. Visual alerts, talking about sound. This can help you see when there's sound. I do think that this is maybe a very poorly way that this is integrated, and if anyone has any mods that they prefer to use, please recommend them. Similarly, colorblind modes, I have only heard complaints about the way that Final Fantasies are executed, and so if someone, so what I've heard is better for most people who are colorblind, if they have the ability to mod, using reshade and using custom colorblind filters, because the options that are available in the accessibility menu are just not very good. Alright. Oh yeah, battle effects. So I only sort of walked through the system config there. Character config, we have such delightful features as literally everything else. So I'm pulling this up with the hotbar K. I also generally just use the chat log button to pull this up because if you can't tell by all my hotbar stuff, I really like being able to open things with a single button. But point is, character config, there are a couple of things that I find almost necessary for raiders to turn on. One, you are going to want to have general UI, well, make sure you skip all your cutscenes, because otherwise you're stuck waiting for that to load. Hide nearby players when close to quest NPCs. Well, not a raid thing, it's just a new thing. It's quite nice. Where was the setting? I didn't quite finish this. Oh, battle effects, duh. So yeah, big one that you want to have on is going to be, is it control? UI. Battle effects. So how I use my, I had it pulled up, but then I tabbed a bunch of places, and I always use my little, here we go. Control settings, character configuration, character, battle effects. The reason that you want to adjust your battle effects is because the game can look like this, and you can't see things such as waymarks or the lines on the floor that you need to see. Finding the battle effects in the menu, as I demonstrated, kind of a pain in the ass. Fortunately, this is something that you can macro. I just have a couple of buttons right on my HUD for battle effects on and battle effects off. You can see sort of as I click them, that those are tabbing. And I would definitely recommend that you either turn your battle effects off, like almost all the way off or to limited, or that you have some kind of similar system to a macro to be able to toggle it as needed. It's tempting to want to your battle effects completely off. However, I do want to point out that things like ground targets do not show up if you have no battle effects. So your scholars, your white mages are going to be very sad if you aren't able to stand in the bubbles because you can't see it. So I would suggest having limited on wherever possible, but I do have everything on none for my battle effects none because there's some mechanics that I just can't see the floor otherwise, and that's just the way it is. And again, why I recommend having this as a toggle. All right, jumping to HUD layout. Yeah, there's a bunch of other things in here. I'll go into targeting a little bit more later, but target settings, I would suggest, really I'd suggest clicking around in here. Things like automatically face target when using action are something that seems like it could be annoying until you turn it off, thinking that you don't need it, and then realize that you keep starting casts and they're interrupted because your character is turned away. Other things that are pretty essential in here is, where is the general? Here we go, movement. See a lot of people discussing the benefits of standard type and legacy type movement. The biggest difference is standard type, which is what I generally use. You will strafe left and right, or you will turn left and right rather by default. I have it set to strafe on my arrow keys. Backwards is always going to be, it's character based, so it's backwards from your character. So you're never going to be able to run backwards. You're only ever going to be walking backwards. This is bad when you need to back up quickly. So legacy type is what I would recommend if you haven't gotten yourself attached to any particular movement. This is just more fluid, more responsive, more flexible. You can raid with standard type. It's just you're going to find yourself turning your camera a lot more. And let's see. I think just sort of skipping around a little bit because there we go. Okay. Oh, the last thing with the movement is the camera movement. So the here's standard auto adjustment. So something that I find awful is this. So one of the very first settings I found to turn off in the game was to always have the auto adjustment turned off. And this means that you can have your character, no matter what movement you've got, staring at the boss, hitting the boss, and you are still looking at the wall that's going to have a big telegraph behind you. Just in general, try to experiment with every thing that you can in general, but specifically choose standard or legacy. Make sure that you are able to move quickly, responsively, however you move. Popping back all the way to, there we go, HUDs. So HUD layouts, sorry, that was a refresh because I have F5 bound to my mouse key because that's my jump button. HUD layout, we are going to have that, I have that on my little thing, HUD layout. The main things that I want you to look out for when setting a HUD layout, one, you can have multiple layouts. So if you want to have your screen completely cleared out for like everything as small as possible, no target bars, nothing for running around and doing story. I have that as my HUD layout too. And then when I need to actually see shit, because I'm raiding, that's HUD layout 1. Then, I'll go over a couple of example layouts, and this is where I'll show off Walkie's beautiful, questionable HUD. But specifically what you're looking for are making sure that your status info, your debuffs, are really visible to you, whatever that means. For some people, that means having it smack dab in the middle of the screen, and that is fine. In my case, I prefer to have it by my hotbar, because I'm always staring at my hotbar, and I make sure that my debuffs is just a little bit larger than my other two enhancements or conditional enhancements. I also, status info other is by default filtered out and shoved in a corner, and I would highly recommend that you do that. This is things like having food on and FC buffs. It's good to have. You want to make sure you see it, but you don't need it in the middle of your hotbar in raid. Duty list, you want to make sure that your duty list is either off or small or off to the side when you're in an instance. In particular, if we go back to our character config, UI settings, HUD, display duty list. You can also turn this off in HUD, hide duty list during instance to duty. Note that if you turn this off, it will still show the timer of like how much time is remaining in instance. So while still hiding the actual like random quests that you don't need to see. Really, just in general with HUD, you want to make sure that it is as clean as you can. As I sort of demonstrated here, switching between 1 and 2, you can set these up to be little macros. Command is just /HUD layout and then the number. So, to-dos, you want to change important elements to be bigger so that you can see them. This includes your debuffs, your party list. Change the size of the lame elements to be smaller. You don't need to see your inventory in the corner, except unless you need to make sure you have space for loot, I guess. You don't need to see your experience bar and duties. You don't need to see your random hotbars that you have from menus. So the more that you can get off the screen, the better. And I would suggest just sort of thinking about what you do and don't need. A really big one is job gauges. Some job gauges are really useful. You know, back in the day, Ask Joe, you could only see what cards you had from the job gauge. Red Mage, I have this job gauge nice and big because I need to know if I'm balanced with my mana. Some job gauges are less useful. So if we hop over to Scholar, this fairy gauge is used on one ability, and you can ignore it for a lot of content. It's just an extremely useful gauge. Otherwise, all it does is tell you how long you've got Seraph. So, the important thing is Aether. So if I don't need this big fairy to take up all this space, simple mode. So every job mage has a simple mode that will change the appearance of the gauge, just be as simple as it can be, some sort of combination of bar and icons and timer. Some of them I prefer to use the simple mode just because they look better. Sometimes I'm okay with the full mode, but that's something that on a per job basis, you're going to want to move around, make sure if you need to see it, it's somewhere you can see. If you don't need to see it, doesn't need to be that big or important, make it smaller, set it to simple mode. Aether flow gauge, on the other hand, this is something that's very important, so I might have a much larger gauge here, but the simple mode versus the complex mode is the same information, just taking up way more space, so I prefer to have it on the simple mode. Yeah, this is all preference stuff at the end of the day. You want to make sure that your layout is easy to see and click. You want your boss's cast bar and target bar. So target bar is one of the primary UI elements that you need to make sure that you can see and is easy to click. I have it sort of up near the top of the screen, which is the default, but it is not uncommon to move this sort of right in the middle of the screen or down to the right, whatever makes sure that you can see it, because you need to be able to see what the boss is casting. This is important. We're going to go, here we go, target info progress bar. So I can set this to be 3 different UI elements. So I can also have my boss's my target's cast bar, progress bar, set this 200%, and have this really, really big. This is something that may or may not be necessary. Let me run to a little... this guy. You have casts, right? You're gonna cast something at me. Give it a chance to cast, but mainly, obviously a lot of bosses are going to have, there we go, big important casts. So if you are frequently missing a cast bar, you can make the progress bar specifically huge. Other important setting to turn on for that, we're gonna jump back to bonus menu, our character configuration HUD, character configuration, NPCs? Nope. There are too many settings. Here we go. Targets, target information, display target's remaining HP percentage. This one's just satisfying to have on as a raider so that you can know that that wasn't just a really close wipe. It was a 0.01% wipe, and you can cry about it. Also make sure you never want to turn off your enmity list. You never want to turn off your progress bar on the enmity list. Jumping back to my HUD, putting that back. And I prefer to have all of my target bar sort of combined into one thing, but it is good to know that you can separate it if you prefer to have different elements more visible. Rather than having my target bar, progress bar filtered out, I instead have used my focus target a lot. This is something that I tend to do as a healer, is have the enemy focus targeted so that I can, click around, be healing my party members, and still see focus target nice and clear with a nice visible cast bar. So focus target, again, is going to be under the HUD. You're also going to want to make sure that you have it as a keybind. I believe default is Shift F. You can also use the enmity bar is a little bit less obvious than the focus target, which is why I prefer the focus target. But enmity bar is also something that is going to show you all of the casts. And sometimes, for example, in DSR, there is an enemy that has a very important cast that you need to be aware of that is off the screen, and you might not be able to target it, but you can see it on the enmity list. So again, it's very important that you do have this enmity list and that your enmity list has the cast bars. Let's see. Toggling elements on and off, try simple job gauge, transparency. I think that's just sort of a nice feature, again, to sort of simplify your screen where you can. Obviously, don't make things so transparent you can't see them, but having elements that are maybe less important faded out a little bit can make it easier to look around. Let's see. Status info. So I would definitely suggest keeping this split into 3 or 4 groups because you want that enfeeblement to be nice and big and way more visible and easy to see compared to enhancements and conditional enhancements. Buffs are good. You want to know your buffs. They're never going to be as important as your debuffs. Let's shove other somewhere else. Yes. We have let's get a little chocobo here. And I'm going to give my chocobo a shield to demonstrate that I have the setting that lets me see the timers on my party's buffs and debuffs. This is under character configuration, party list, display party lists, and display remaining time of status effects. This is off by default. Also, turn on max status effects because, especially during buff windows, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there and you need to be able to see as much as you can. Party list stuff. I've got other stuff there. Target HP bar. Make sure we have the progress bar. Make sure we have the remaining HP percentage. So, obviously I have the game open in another tab, but this is just sort of a sample UI. Mine when it looks kind of nice. I've got my menus over to the right off to the side. My hotbars I have set as a couple of different sizes, so I've always have my main combo here in the largest buttons. I also have a little gap here because I actually have small hands, so I am only using keys for this half of my hotbars generally, and everything sort of 5 and up, I tend to click. I have it on buttons so that I can press it as needed, but that's part of why I also have this little gap, is so I'm not accidentally clicking my skills that I don't want to click. I'll go over some more hotbar stuff, like how to hide the extra spots. This is Wocky's hotbar. It scares me. This is their HUD. It's just... So, focus target's right up here. The map is so large. The duty list is so large. Why are the mouse keys up here? I just find this terrifying. Also, note that they have their little scroll on their hotbar. That means that they could scroll through different hotbars on their main hotbar. You can do this. She raids like this. You know, it's just, maybe think about what you can do better. Alright. This is a hotbar from Cat. This is sort of an example of a console hotbar, and also showing off having both the simple job gauge and having the cast bar or the target bar right in the center of the screen. There's a lot of important stuff that the boss is doing. You want to be able to see what the boss is casting. Also, if you're playing with controller, chances are you're sitting a little bit further away from the screen, so having your UI elements a little bit larger. Similarly, this is a screenshot from static member Amai, showing off very large mini map, large job gauge simplified, and controller hotbar way down at the bottom, just to so that, you know, as we can see from this photo, she's sitting away from the screen, making sure that what elements that you need are as big as you need them to be. This is the default hotbars and UI layout, just to kind of give you an idea of how close Wocky's layout is to default. She's been waiting for like 10 years. Why hasn't she fixed this? All right, hotbars are main thing that I want to jump into. Like I said, let me kill this guy. Like I said, I have sort of my hotbars laid out like so. As far as combat hotbars, I have my shared hotbars, which is, again, we're opening up K, hotbars, sharing. Anything that's a shared hotbar is going to show up no matter what class you're on, right? So in this case, my HUD, we can sort of pull this up for labels. I've got hotbar 5 over here. I've got hotbar, what's this, 9. Hotbar 10 is not used right now, but it's there if I need it. Hotbar 7, hotbar 8. But I have, by default, you only have you only have, I think, 1, 2, and 3 per job. I think you need a lot more considering the skills that every job has. So try to use as few shared hotbars as you can get away with. But shared hotbars are really useful. That's where I have all of my job switching things, so I don't have to constantly pull up my character to search for gear set, to change each job manually like so. To get more space out of your shared hotbars, you can cheat. So you saw on my HUD, this is hotbar 8. And I'll just sort of pop that nice and large for the purpose of sharing. I have a little macro here that pops up hotbar 8. So this is sort of main. Display hotbar 8. It also has copy Arcanist 3 share 8. Because if I were to pull up this is also hotbar 8. This is hotbar 8. And they all have different setups on them because what the hotbar is doing is not just showing the hotbar and, you know, toggling that on and off. It is going to my Arcanist and showing and grabbing all of the skills that I have set here to copy and paste them onto hotbar 8, depending on what button I press. I find this very useful. You don't need to get this fancy with it. I will share the macros that I use for this in the chat. But this is sort of a big thing that I would suggest if you find yourself without enough hotbar space. Just basically it lets you get extra hotbars by using hotbars on jobs that you're not using. I'm not using Arcanist. I'm only ever going to be using Summoner or Scholar. So I can safely hop to Arcanist and Archer. And really just those two. I need to level more classes, keyboard chopstones. And use those to have just all of this other menu stuff set to pop up as needed. Infinite menus. Other things with hotbars is similar to the HUD layout, just making and what I was talking about as far as what I like to be able to click on and press. Just think about what you are actually using. Everyone's HUD layout is going to be individual, and the best way that you're going to have the best HUD is by making sure that you are just setting it to how you actually use it. If I have all these big buttons here, and I'm not going to make, you know, my party chat macro the biggest button to press, because I only need it for some things. Alright. Location and HUD, change keybinds. Yes. I also have a little bit of a janky hotbar here because I wanted it to look nice. So this is hotbar 2, hotbar 1, and 3 and 4. You can, any buttons on your hotbar, you can just add to keybinds. So I've got Q, E, W, R, F, V all set to hotbar keybinds rather than, say, movement, because I just need to be able to press more keys. And I can't hit the ones that are over on the right side of the screen that easily. Keybinds is in an entirely new menu. I'll go over some more keybinds in a second, but hotbar is pretty self-explanatory. I also have this little blank spot, completely empty, for the reason that I mentioned of I don't want to accidentally click on anything that I don't mean to. This doesn't mean I'm sacrificing a spot, but because I have my little hotbar expansion trick, I have infinite spots. All right. So yeah, it's showing again. My Archer also has a bunch of sort of dummy hotbars. The macro is just a little icon, display 7, and then I copy the job icon and post it to the shared hotbar 7 in this case. Keybinds, a couple of important ones that you want to make sure you have. Duty actions are not bound to any keys by default. I think that that's a mistake, and you should put some keys on there. I have mine just set to, I think, B and Shift B, but it's useful. Also, return camera to save position, save camera position, control, and shift camera. This stuff is kind of awkward. It's not going to come up a ton, but it can be really useful for, say, I don't know, maybe the boss has just a bunch of dancers behind him and you can't see it because you're always staring at the ground. You can tilt your camera up and down with control and then arrow keys. That is going to be control. Yeah, here we go. Control up, control down. For tilt camera up, tilt camera down. I would also point out you can do, this one's a little bit more niche, save current camera position, but remember the legacy movement. If I go control end, set this camera position, and then I am running and I want to return to save position. I just turned my camera around. So let's see if I'm doing that. And if I am moving and not on auto run, then I am able to sort of set my character, just so it's a handy way basically to sort of auto set your camera into specific spots. It can be useful for navigating tricky movement setups. Most people are not going to use it. It can be really useful though for specific movement setups, especially if you have just sort of awkward controller stuff. Right, tilt camera up and tilt camera down is the main one though that I wanted to make sure to show off. Also, this one's just sort of silly fun, but pause button, you can look. This is client side only. No one else is gonna know that you're looking up. I think it's useful. Keybinds, targeting. We're gonna talk about more targeting. I have a lot of my targeting cleared out because I use my F keys for other things, such as jump, because I'm cursed. I really wish I used this better. I do think that this is a very underutilized part of people's keybinds, and especially if you are, have using controller or just are playing Astro and are constantly needing to target other people, you need to, or you don't need to. You can set it so that you are targeting people in your target list just with a single keybind. Default for this is the F keys, and you can also just do tab targeting. So having it so that you're always, say, if your main tank is going to be the second in the party list, you can always press F2 to be targeting the main tank. And then you can press T. So this is target of your target, which is, or target of your current target, which is another really important key, is you can, again, set this to anything that you want. If I am healing my tank, and I need to be able to, let's jump down here. If I'm healing my tank, and then I want to tab back to the boss, but say it's M6, and there's a bunch of enemies out on the screen, and I don't know what is the enemy is, what enemy I'm supposed to hit. I can do my target of my target. I believe I have that as Control T. But target of my target to just instantly go to the, here we go. Instantly go to the enemy that my tank is attacking. Let's see. Focus target, already went over that, but that's going to be really useful. Other big advantage of focus target, if you have it set to an enemy or the boss, or say you have your tank set as your focus target and you need to be able to heal them at a moment's notice, you can set a keybind to just always target your focus target. There is also being able to cycle up through the enmity list with number keys. This is kind of a pain, but what you can also do, besides just having it cycle through the enmity list with keys, is you can go to movements. There we go. In mouse wheel settings, which is in character configuration, because this game is a pain, character, control, mouse. You can set it to be shift or control to scroll up or down through the enmity list. Again, I bring this up mostly because of M6, which has a lot of enemies that you're going to have to attack and choose who you're targeting at specific times. So I can set this so that I am easily rolling through these two, and I can see what I have targeted on my enmity list. This is really useful if you are a chronic tab targeter like me and you're just tired of constantly feeling like you're cycling through every enemy with tab and you can't tell who you actually have targeted with any particular tab. Let's see. Similarly, you can use a lot of macros that are really useful. We have our /target, /target enemy, /target last enemy. So if you need to tab away, again, say you are targeting a boss and you need to target your tank, maybe you have a button with a macro target last enemy or target last target that just automatically zoops you back to what enemy you need to be hitting. Let's see, enmity list. Yeah, enmity list is the main thing for the purposes of M6S. You need to know when you're hitting that cat. You need to know when you're hitting that Yan. You need to know when you're hitting that Vey. Make sure you can see your enmity list. Make sure, if nothing else, even if you're not doing anything fancy with the macros, you want to still be able to click the enmity list, because what is going to be on your screen is going to be a terrible mess. And it might not be the easiest to click on the enemies accurately. Let's see. Oh, and then also have, there we go. Another sort of feature that's not super common, but if you put a little marker over someone's head, you can see that the enmity list shows that marker. So even though it's two identical enemies, I can tell which one I'm supposed to be hitting because there's a marker over their head. Another tip that you can use for M6S, maybe you mark the rays 1 and 2 for your party, and then you are always clicking 1 or 2. You can also see this is a new button with this patch. It is going to be under Actions, General. This is Attack Target. What this does is whatever enemy you have marked, this is a button that will automatically target that guy and start hitting them. Something like DSR, someone just focus mark all the ads when they appear and not cast at all. So that's going to be in the illegal section of the guide here in a little bit, because there are some ways that you can put targets on everything without stopping hitting them that I mostly wouldn't recommend, but are used in some ultimates. In general, though, you don't have to make it that fancy. I have my signs pulled in one of my little pop-up menus, but it's just under Party Finder signs or party signs. This is clunky. I will often just have target to attack 1 on my hotbar. And just always use the target to attack 1 to set that manually. Can also set, this one is, I was experimenting with it. There we go. If I just do this to be attack, it's previously a janky thing. You can set macros so that it's just always going to add up and keep targeting everything, so that as you tab onto new targets and keep just hitting the target macro, it will add more numbers. So you can set them all on every enemy in the instance without really skipping a beat. I'm not saying that you need to do this, but there are manual options for getting a bunch of targets out there that are pretty easy if you find the ability to target things individually useful, and to use the little UI tips to see what you need to hit, or to auto-target back to any specific, target to attack. And there's those buttons for bind, for don't attack. You can have all of the different things there. Let's see. Illegal. That's going back to DSR. There is something called Automarker. Automarker is a plugin that's attached to ACT, which is the combat tracker, the DPS meter that most people use in this game. Automarkers are not needed for any content. They are commonly used for some ultimates. I am not a fan of using them for ultimates generally, but they are common enough particularly in Uwu and in Top, that it's difficult to party find these fights without someone having them. So just kind of want to point out that they do exist. They can be very useful in some content. No savage fights commonly use auto markers. Sometimes people will pull them up, such as for M6S. We have a lot of enemies out there. I believe there are people who use auto markers to mark order of priority. That's generally not as helpful as just knowing what to do. And you'll find that a lot of the pettiest uses of auto markers in Party Finder are not people who need them for themselves, but who instinctively distrust their teammates and assume that they're idiots and need things spelled out for them. Just part of why I dislike it in a lot of situations is it assumes inherently that your party can't be trusted, and it's just going in with a negative attitude, and is adding visual clutter where it's not useful. I know it can feel like that sometimes, but yelling at your party by throwing markers everywhere automatically is maybe a little bit less useful than, just doing the fight. Alright, let's see. We're at the point where my presentation is thoroughly scuffed, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything as I go through here. Coverage targeting, cycling through enemy list, movement, and camera adjustment. Oh, really quick, settings backup. You're going to this is all a lot of work to make your UI perfect and beautiful and your HUD exactly how you want it to be on your character selection screen. Any of these gears, this gear will back up your system settings. The gears next to each individual character are going to back up everything that's under the character configuration and your HUD and your display, sound input, hotbars, gear sets, gear character config, macros, all of this. What you can also do is if you right-click your character and go to import character settings, this will let you say I have, let's see, log out. But say I have, this really beautiful hotbar that I've made for Adieu, but I hop over to further Adieu, which has a default hotbar, and I hate it. I can pop over to my brand new character, further Adieu, over on Crystal Balmung, and I can use the import character settings in order to grab all of that and place it on the correct character. So, import character settings from further Adieu Midgard Sormer. Just want everything. Now it's copied. Now when I log in, it's going to look not like the ugly default hotbars, it's going to look nice. Alright, targeting, UI appearance. I almost forgot. Oh my god, can you not do that on console? That's really rough. I know on PC it's just right click. The other thing on PC is you are able to use are able to go into your files to find the character config folders. That's what you had to do before the most recent, I think like 2 patches ago, or maybe just Dawn Trail. They let you change it. But yeah, you can see even though I don't have Dancer unlocked, I have a bunch of dancing abilities here because my Lancer is storing dance abilities on my main. Alright. I do want to point out a couple other settings that are really important in the character config. Changing the color of your party members' names, changing so that they're not showing their full name, they're only showing, I want to go to the other character, changing it so that they're only showing initials in battle, or only showing, not showing their full name and traveler and title and can really clear up a lot of visual clutter, and it's something that I'd suggest basically just going down this list of the names under character config and doing display name, changing it, either leaving it full name or changing it to initials and something. Take out the title. You don't need to know that they're an ultimate legend. HP bar settings. It's useful to have it when the HP is below 100%. I think that's default, but that's something, so if you're a healer, you know that if there's no HP bar above their head, they don't need any healing. Companion display names, you can set it so that you don't have to see your chocobo name because you hate them. Similar stuff like that. The other big setting here is, let's log back in, is changing it so that your party under character config names, general, party member settings, apply colors according to role. This one's another one that's a newer feature that I highly recommend. It makes it so that you can easily see that the tanks are the bright blue names and the healers the bright green names. And like just about every feature in this game that involves changing names of colors, you can individually change what colors those are. So if you already set every enemy to be red and then the DPS show up and they're also red, you can make the DPS pink. And in fact, if I pop open to character general, yeah, my DPS on the pinker end of things, because I like to have nice bold colors. For NPCs, my engaged enemies is that DPS red. Display name, I have only my own only showing during battle, stuff like that. These are just important settings to skim through. By default, this game's going to show you a lot of information you don't need. Figuring out what you do and don't need is really helpful, because if I go to my own name and it's always my full name and I show my title and I show my HP bar and you say I'm in another world, it's going to show that I have like Wanderer down there. This is a lot of extra noise, and none of this helps me in battle. So just sort of something to consider if I'm only showing this information out of battle, or I'm showing it during battle, but I'm only showing my name and not my title and not my HP bar. But, alrighty. Character accessibility, like I said, there's not a lot of options. Look into reshade, targeting, ground target. This is a little thing. There's a lot of UI elements that are easy to miss. If you right-click an enemy, get this little symbol, that means it's auto-targeting. You also, for ground target, I have that macro that I showed you, but there's also this feature, press action twice to execute. So if I pop back to little Astro, instead of doing the star targets macro that I've got, I can also just set this so that I have the thing and just compress it twice to place that. And that's something, if you prefer not to use a macro for that, there are options in the game. Auto attack is something that you can actually also set on the character's UI. Let's see, control, target, automatically lock on when initiating auto attack. There's also auto target according to priority and enable full auto target. If you, like me, have a problem with clicking off the boss and then not clicking onto them again and not being able to tab target because they're a wall boss and you're staring at the lines on the floor, you might want to do auto target so it automatically is what this does is if you're executing a target-based attack with no target specified, it's just going to hit the boss, the enemy that's closest to you. That's something that it's worth considering turning on. I have not played with this as much, but I really should, because as a tab targeter, it drives me insane when I click off the target and can't immediately get back on. Target ring. Want to make sure, obviously make sure that you have target ring on. If you're not aware, little UI tips, the ring shows where your flanks are with the arrows, and it shows where your butt is for rear as far as positionals go. And pop back here. Chat. This is the tip that made me want to do this whole thing is filtering out chat logs. This is under character configuration, log windows. You can also just go chat log settings, this little gear here. Filters. By default, you're only going to have 3 filters. I have 4 because, frankly, I wish that you could add a lot more. For filtering out boss casts, all you want to do is make sure that you have uncheck all in chat. Announcements, you can have some, but make sure it's not going to be stuff that is interrupting during battle. So I have in this log, I have filtered out my gathering message and loot messages. These are things that are not going to show up in a battle log. I'm not going to be fighting to read, whose fish someone caught with the boss's cast. And then battle, you have to go here, engaged enemy, actions engaged, by engaged enemies. So we can actually pop here, open duty finder, unrestricted party, confirm, and hop in. With embers. We can see that Ifrit now, in my battle log that I just filtered out, I have it so that NPC announcements are here so I can see the text. And I can also chat log, make sure that you have it. Ifrit uses Incinerate. So even though there wasn't even a cast bar for that, I can see what that ability is called. Can also, but this is how you're going to filter out so that you can see when, say, Dancing Green uses readies flip to A side or readies flip to B side. That's going to show up as a cast bar in here. If I want to change the size of this, I have to go to the other thing, log, battle. And now I can see it's a little bit bigger for the purposes of demonstrating. Other UI thing, this flying text, that's a setting that you can change under Settings, UI, HUD, display flying text. You can also make this flying text really, really large. Let's see if I think that should do it. And that can be helpful for if you are a tank, knowing if it is a physical attack with the little sword icon or a magic auto attack with the little magic icon. Let's see. Oh, chat log part 2 can also be useful to separate. If you go to general, is it name display? Yeah, general name display. You can show so that your chat shows roles and colors based on roles. So that could be a fun little useful. He's not. Look, I'm not intimidated by him. I'm just not afraid. He can't do anything to me. Last note about chat log sizes is if you are using some sort of echo to have that easy to see, or party chat, it can be beneficial to make sure that you have that text nice and large so that you can actually see it. For this battle log filter tip, I have it as my own thing because I will sometimes pull it way tall with much smaller size. It's usually at 14. Because maybe Dancing Green casts ready to A side, like way back here. So every so often, I will make sure that I will have it as a separate thing, just so I can pull it and stretch it up, so that I can get those memory mechanics even when they're way, way, way far back. Let's see, log filters. So that's going to be where I just went over. You want to go to chat, battle, engaged enemy. Fun fact, if you set in your thing to log details or to filters and go to unengaged enemy and put actions initiated by unengaged enemies, you're going to have the fastest chat log ever during every frontline engagement. Just something neat. A couple of console tips. The big one that every console player I talked to mentioned was putting sprint on their controller. By default, I believe you have auto run as L1, so getting a sprint macro so that you can take sprint off of your cross hotbar is something that a lot of controller people mentioned is just the one macro that they use. All it is just action sprint, and the target is me, and you put it on 99 or 98 because those you can set in your drop-down menu, and this is some screenshots again provided by Kat showing where to find that in the system config and the sort of button configuration. There we go. And she has that on the right stick for execute macro 99. Cool. Last thing I want to go over, we're just about at the end, but I do want to cover some mods. This is sort of an infamous screenshot that goes around every other patch, really, at this point, because mods break, and, you know, Dalamud and ACT and all these things take a little bit to update to each patch. Don't be this guy. I'm going to mention some mods that I find very useful, that I think are helpful to people. All mods are against terms of service. Yoshi P doesn't want us to use any of these mods. There are some mods, there's no rule about what is an okay or not okay mod. That's all going to come down to personal judgment, personal preference. The only way that you can be 100% sure that your mods are affecting zero gameplay whatsoever is to not use any. That said, if you're going to use some, I do think that because this game is, as we have been discussing over the past hour, sort of a UI hell, there's some that can be really useful to identify different things that the UI maybe makes harder to see. Main mod that I recommend for this purpose is Res Please. So I use Dalamud Launcher, Dalamud plugins, and if I go to installed, I have Res Please, and all that Res Please does is if I am it does two things. One, if a party member is dead and I go to try to raise them, then it will show on my party list that I am casting on that person that I'm trying to raise. It will also show if another healer is hard casting, trying to raise someone, and it will like light up bright red if, here we go, test player being raised. So if I am raising, it will sort of light up blue. If someone else is raising, it lights up green. If I've been hard casting and someone swift casts under my nose, it will turn red. So I know I can stop the cast right away. They're already up. I don't need to worry about it. The other thing that it can show is it can show that I have a status effect that needs to be cleansed. This is something where it does show in your UI. It shows that it has the little bar over the icon to show that you can use Esuna, but that can be easy to miss, especially if you have a million billion debuffs that everyone has in their party. Also, I find this setting very useful for alliance raids, because it will highlight alliance names in this pink when they have debuffs that can be cleansed. So that's something that, and again, sort of can show unnecessary. You can edit all of those colors individually. Other useful plugins, Death Recap. I have not used this one for a while because I have found that I prefer just recording VODs for review, but Death Recap just shows you what killed you, how much damage it did. This is a really easy way to identify, did I die to not enough healing? Was I overkilled by like 1000 HP? Or did I die to having a Vaughn because I did the mechanic wrong? Did I die to 999 HP, right? Oh yeah, no, these are awful messages. I hate this guy. Chat bubbles seems like it shouldn't be game-breaking, but I actually find it, let's see. So let's do, I have little chat bubbles, and this can be useful for all those party chat macros that I was talking about, or even echo chat. So I am seeing this sort of right in the middle of my screen where I'm looking at the boss. If someone else is throwing out party chat macros, I can see it not just in my chat log, but also above people's heads. And so that is something that I do consider a useful mod for raiding, because you can, I need to sink this guy back down. A useful mod for raiding because it does show information in a more clear way that I might not have been able to see otherwise. Waymark presets. This one is, again, if I pop open my Delamid plugins, I go over here, Waymark preset plugin, pop open our settings, and we can go ahead. I'm not as familiar with this one, but basically what this lets you do is you can snag waymarks from other people if you haven't been in the instance before, and type them in and grab them. So if you're going in with the first time with your static, you can have nice clean waymarks, especially useful for something like Uptime M4S, which had very precise waymarks spots. Can also just place them wherever. Let's see. Am I not able to? Like I said, I'm not used to this one, but this is also useful for just having more waymarks than are in your little waymark thingamathing. Yeah, having the increased number of waymarks, you can change the names of the waymarks. This one I know Jamie uses a lot. I was mentioned in chat he uses it. I have just not been using it much yet, so I don't have it set up to show off, but I do need to use it. I think it's very useful, and there is just sort of a really sad limit on waymarks in this game, especially when you consider something like Anabasios, where I might have a million different setup markers, or these would be for part 1 or part 2, and I don't know what they are, because this game doesn't tell me anything. Yeah, it's good that in P8S, when I started raiding, there was one tab. There was one tab of waymarks, and it was so sad. Yeah, they need to change that, but that Waymark plugins is a good plugin that I'd suggest. Visibility is one that I'm mentioning. It's just called visibility. It's by like sheep something. That you can turn off other players' models. That's something that I know Jamie advised for, say, the moon. If you're lagging too much, because everyone's on the fucking moon. Or if you are doing hunt trains and there's just hundreds of people and your computer can't handle it, and no matter how low you turn down your graphics, the game keeps trying to load every person. Visibility is a plugin that you can use to just turn people off. Simple Tweaks has a lot of random things. I don't use it basically, or I don't use it at all, but I know a lot of people like it. I think it's the most used plugin on Dalamud. One of the big things is it can show you your slidecast window. There's a couple of things that you can do with your slidecast window. Let me just sort of grab this. So change pose. This is an emote. If I look, notice how that emote lights up a little bit before my other skill abilities. That emote lighting up, that is your slidecast window. As soon as that emote lights up, that means that you can, no matter what you're casting, you can move safely without interrupting it. He went down with one Malefic. That's so sad. That is a ability or something that you can use an emote on your hotbar, or you can use the mod Simple Tweaks. Has just a little slide cast window, and it will show you directly on your progress bar, at what point you can move safely. Let's see. And then enmity debuff lists. This is another one that Jamie recommended when I asked him for tips. This one is just going to show on your enmity lists. Hop back into Bowl of Embers since we killed our last test subject. All that this is going to do is show, see if he lives this much. I don't have the debuff, or I don't have the mod on. But all that the enmity debuff list does is it shows debuffs next to the enmity list. So this can be really useful for playing Bard, for example, and you have your debuffs on a bunch of different enemies, keeping track of what enemies they are on. ACT is a DPS mark or DPS tracker. I'm not going to go into it. There's much better people who know way more about it to really get the best use out of their features. I will say that obviously parse isn't everything, but running with ACT on and checking your logs afterwards for your own personal gain is not inherently toxic. It's helpful. I recommend using in particular XIV analysis in order to take a look, because XIV analysis will sort of break down the important numbers. Even if you don't know every single thing about your job, XIV analysis is going to tell you, hey, you have these cooldowns that would have gained you DPS, and you forgot to hit them, or you didn't hit them enough times, or as much as you physically could have. It is going to tell you your GCD uptime, which is just so important for DPS, is knowing how good you are at constantly, keeping your GCD rolling. Because any time that you are not hitting a GCD is lost damage. If you could be hitting the boss and you're not with a GCD, you are losing damage. And that's the number one place that people lose damage. So I know ACT and DPS and FF logs, reputation for being toxic, and rightfully so. I do suggest it as a basic tool for rating nonetheless. Auto markers, which I mentioned briefly under targeting, is a mod that is through ACT. There are other mods through ACT that I am not familiar with, but those tend to be the mods that get Wolf Guy over here all panties up in a bunch. I'm not saying you can't use them. Again, every mod is illegal, but people are going to make fun of you for using them in a way that they're not going to make fun of you for using Simple Tweaks. So consider that. And then last note on mods is Reshade, which is just a cosmetic mod. We'll find a lot of people who do really cool G-posing will have different reshade stuff and filters and suggestions. I have not used it because I am lazy, but I do know that that's something that, though it seems frivolous, is vital for some people for the purpose of accessibility. Because it has, again, much better color blind filters than are available in-game. And I believe, I think Deep was saying that he has a friend who has some really good filters for stuff like M5S. Oh, yes. Thank you, Darkstorm. Good tip. Is turning off lock on. Lock on is by default not something that the mouse and keyboard players have to deal with, but I accidentally turned it on while testing earlier, and I was like, oh god, I can't turn it off. So that is a good call, is lock on just makes it so you can't move your camera, you can't move anything. G-Shade, it used to be the same as Reshade, but Numpad 5. Yeah, see, Deep, I have all my keybinds fucked, is sort of the thing. So the only way I'm getting locked on is by demonstrating it in the menu. And yes, thank you, that is individual macro 99 for making sure you have the macros that you can put on your controller. G-Shade, just sort of commenting on that. That was a program that was very similar to Reshade. They basically did the same thing, but the dev got really weird about it. And basically put in a security flaw into the program that on purpose to be mean. I'm doing UI settings. Control settings, targets. So automatically lock on when initiating auto target. This is what lock on is. I can't move right now with my normal mouse. I can't move my camera, which means I can't move my mouse. So if you are basing your movement on your camera, this is deadly. So yes, very good point. Lock-on is not something that mouse and keyboard people have to deal with, but you should turn it off if you are on console, because anything that's going to limit your movement this drastically is going to kill you in raids. And I don't know how to get it off now. And then, let's see. I think there is some other question. Let's see, illegal reshade. Thank you for sticking with me for an hour and a half. Very quick recap of the stuff I went over. I know that was rambly. I apologize for having not the most put together presentation. But like, what I would recommend for raiders, make sure you can clearly see the boss's HP bar with percentage and their cast bar. Make sure you can see your debuffs and the party's debuffs with timers. Make sure you can clearly see the enmity list and the party list. Make sure you can see your own cast bar. I would definitely recommend changing your party members' names to be different colors by role. There is also a setting, I sort of skimmed over it, but under, I believe, display names, general, display class or job icons with nameplate. There's a couple of different settings. I also find this very useful for the purpose of being able to call it, hey machinist, or hey Astro, or something in voice, without needing to read or remember someone's entire name. Not that I don't respect people, but just easier not to. And then setting name length and clearing off titles just to clear out that sort of clutter, particularly during fights. Filter HChat log with boss casts. I would suggest boss casts and announcements because, if you notice, I have this nice clean, even though I've been doing 3 Ifrit fights, I can tell when each one started because I have these, boss announcements that I made nice bright blue, and it's not just an endless screen of, Ifrit uses Incinerate. And then, also, you want to make sure that you are able to read party chat very easily, so having some sort of filter for party chat or echo, turning off battle effects or setting them to simple, and having some way that works for you to very easily swap them. Minimize less needed UI elements. Compare legacy and standard movement. Make sure you have free movement as you need. Back up your settings. And lastly, cap your tomes. All right. I think that's everything. Any questions? And if people want to raise their hand, I can pop you up from the audience, or you can just type in the chat. I have been watching the chat. Filters for Reshade. I don't use Reshade. Unfortunately, for all that I am passionate about UI, I'm very lazy about some of the mods that I use. So I have not gotten into Reshade. I got into Gshade very briefly and then uninstalled it when the drama went down. That said, I know that, I think Deep, I'm gonna tag him. Deep uses Reshade. So I'm going to tag him in here, see if he has any tips. Yeah, and big thanks to Kat for the controller tips, as well as that tip from Darkstorm earlier. I don't use controller at all, so I definitely was consulting other people for what do you need, what is useful. I will note, you are able to copy and paste macros on PC. You can't do that on console. If you are able to log in on console and PC, I would suggest setting up all your macros on your PC setup to use on your console, but that does require you buying the game twice. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming out. I'll have this thread will be up until midnight. I'll drop a couple of the macros that I use in there so people can easily copy-paste them as needed. And in general, feel free to ping. Oh, I almost forgot. I was going to show off one more stupid, elaborate macro setup that I'm proud of. This is actually based on a conversation with Solaris the other day because of M6S. It's M6S again. It's that fight with all of the different smaller ads and a big boss. So you are swapping between AoE rotations and single target rotations pretty regularly. This is a macro that I have that automatically changes my 1, 2, 3, 4 between my single target rotation and my AoE target rotation. I have it set to have a little sound effect, but to sort of break down what's going on here, for Pretty Icon, I stole icons from Blue Mage. And then I have on Pugilist and on Lancer, I imported my dancer skills. You cannot get you cannot drag dancer skills from your actions bar onto your Lancer keyboard, or Lancer hotbar. But if you use the copy feature, which is again how we do these fancy pop-ups, you can copy your dancer hotbar onto your Lancer hotbar. And then you can copy your Lancer hotbar back to your dancer hotbar with a button so that you can easily swap between, say, AoE and single target. This is way too fancy. You don't need to do it, but it is something that I just want to show off as far as, you know, if you really dig deep into macros, into UI stuff, there are a lot of things that if you've ever been thinking like, God, I wish I could just swap between AoE skills and single target skills, you can. You just have to puzzle out how. I will say a much simpler version of this that I use for fishing is I have a spearfish button that a spearfish macro just sort of swaps. You can just manually set actions based on hotbar number and hotbar location. So I have it so it just pops up all of my spearfishing skills, and then similarly when I need to fish with my fishing pole, I can go back to the fish pole skills. So stuff like that, really useful for classes like Fisher or Dancer that just feel very bloated, a lot of skills, but you want to be able to press them all at certain points. Now I'm done. Thank you everyone for coming, I appreciate it. And I'm gonna hop off, but I will have the thread open or people are free to just DM me and ask me questions. Yeah, thank you.